It's also about customer experience. I would hate to get 5 emails just because I'm in different databases. Can you imagine all 5 of them saying the same exact thing? I'm just going to put them in a delete folder and I'll never look at them. It's not just about sending emails or sending or communicating with our customers, but communicating effectively.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Sharmeelee Bala. Sharmeelee is the Chief Information Officer and Head of Product Management at JCPenney, a 122-year-old department store chain that earns roughly $7 billion in annual revenue. Sharmeelee has been in her role for roughly 3 years, and in that role, she's focused on helping the company deliver on its mission of providing each customer the right product at the right price through the right channel of their choosing. She has done so with better data strategy and now increasingly with the use of artificial intelligence as well. I look forward to hearing more about that story and more through this conversation. Sharmeelee, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Excited to talk to you.
It's a great pleasure, and I'm honored that you would join me today. Well, Sharmeelee, let's begin with your company, JCPenney. You have been the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for almost 3 years now, and I'd love to get into the specifics of your role in a moment. But before we do, offer a little context as to JCPenney's business today, if you would.
For sure. Yes, it's almost going to be 3 years, and I can't believe it's going to be 3 years. JCPenney, as you all know, an iconic brand, have been and will continue to be. How we are focusing on is, and I think you would have seen it, a lot of our focus has been on customers, making sure that we are there for our customers, right product, right merchandise, at the right time, at the right price, right? Like that value equation is the most important for us, for our customers, because we are in there to ensure that they get everything through their life events and get it at the right price, right value, at the same time, wherever they want it, right? Like we are not going to force them to come to the store or to go online, but whatever is convenient for them. Many of our customers prefer to go to the stores because they want to touch and feel, right? Like they want that exposure. They want to see different things. And we want to offer them that. So that seamless experience is the focus for us as a department store, as a fashion-focused company, to be able to offer that to our customers. And excited to say that we are working diligently on making it really easy and effective. And that experience for our customer is coming along.
Very exciting, and clearly some consequential technology roles, digital roles to play in breathing life in what you describe. I would love to again dive into those details. Before I do, though, can you talk a bit about the role of CIO? What's within your purview, more generally speaking, in your role now for nearly 3 years?
Yep. So every company has a different version or a different definition, right? Like I'm glad that you asked this question. Here at JCPenney, I'm responsible and I own anything to do with technology across. So all of the technology that we have in the stores, DCs, e-commerce, our back office, and our security operations, which is another focus area for us. And at the same time, architecture, right? We do want to make sure that we are building for the future. So ensuring that we have our eyes totally focused on architecture. And at the same time, also on our data and analytics, because we do have a massive amount of data, rich data, that we want to ensure that we are using it for the right things for our customers. And I also have the responsibility, which I got recently as head of our product management group. How I see product managers are the ones who are actually understanding the business and helping technology to be an enabler for our business. And they are also understanding what's out there in the industry, right? Because our ecosystem consists of both. We build some of our technology, and then we also use off-the-shelf products. And some of the products we bring in from outside, we add in some flavor of JCPenney to it, right? Because that's what needs to bring in that IP for us. And so it's a combination of build and buy, ensuring somebody is looking at what's out there, what are some of the things. So I also have product, and we are an enterprise function, right? We work with every one of our business partners. So The main focus for me is obviously technology stability, making sure that we are building and maintaining and stable, keeping it stable for right now and for the future. At the same time, how my CEO defines my role is I'm also out there to focus on value, right? Like we are not just a technology product company to build everything cool and like everything is like, hey, we are not that because we're not selling those products, not yet, right? But at the same time, we have to bring in value. So that's the focus that I have. So technology as an enabler translates into I'm there in the prioritization conversations. I'm there in making sure that we are actually solving the problems that needs to be solved. What many of the companies have, and even JCPenney has been in the past, is our business partners will come in and say, I need you to implement this XYZ because this is going to solve a problem that I have. But now technology is at the table trying to actually understand the problem and say, how do we solve it together? Maybe that's the right answer, but we are in this together to understand the problem instead of just saying, go implement this, solve, or go work with this particular product company to be able to implement it. So it's a definitely a change in how we are doing. So that change management has been really interesting. And it's been good because when it comes from the top and when my peers are all aligned, it becomes much more easier. But that's the role that we are playing right now as a technology organization. And that's my agenda.
A fascinating one and a broad one, as you point out as well. I really appreciate you sharing all of those details. I want to talk a bit more about the role that tech and digital play in getting the right product, right merchandise at the right price and the right value proposition, as you point out, for customers, in addition to serving them in the way that they wish to be served. As I mentioned earlier, clearly, just in the brief description you had as part of the overview of the company itself, there are major aspects of what your team does, no doubt, in order to ensure that that's delivered upon. Can you talk a little bit more about the role that your team plays in making sure that that mission is accomplished?
Yep, for sure. There are multiple aspects of it, right? Like, let me start from the beginning. We do have private label, right? Like we have our own products, and then we also have national brands, and it's a good, healthy mix of both. So there are systems and technology and process that's related to the systems that exist. And they have been in existence for a long time, right? And so our business is also trying to change in terms of how the process gets better. How can we simplify the process? How can we consolidate and make it more efficient, right? And every one of those things translates into there are some systematic changes that needs to happen, right? And so we augment with them, right? Like that's how I see it. We enable them and we augment, and then we work together with them to make it happen. And why I had to give you this context was, let me talk about PO simplification, or like just the overall simplification of the process that happens when we try to source something to till it reaches the right node, inventory node, right? Like whether it's in the store, whether it's in the DC, whether it's in like our fulfillment center, how do we define? And we all plan these things 9 to 10, like 12 months in advance. So system plays a huge role, not just about like execution of all of this process, but also about making them think differently, right? All of these different models that comes into play of how do I forecast something, which I don't know what the trend is going to be. I don't really know what the weather is going to be at that time, right? So you have these models that gives a right, like this is how it needs to be. And then during the season or right before the season, it keeps changing based on the actual happening of events that occurs, right? So the weather, especially this year, like we never had a fall. We never like it's still like we are in November and the entire country is like, is it going to get cold? Like, are we going to have cold? So the fall season has shifted. Like we've got a long summer. The fall season has shifted. And I'm sure nobody knows if we are going to have spring early or spring is going to be later or is it going to be on time. So all of those things you have to have. And when you deal with like thousands and thousands of merchandise, and if you have to decide for them, you have to depend on these systems to be able to at least give a feel for what they need to be able to do. So technology has been playing a role from a long time, but here at JCPenney, it's being used as an enabler, and we are being very, like, we can't use it across everywhere, but we are being very diligent about, let's pick and choose the areas where we can make a difference and then make them as our pilot or proof of concepts, and then let's them roll it out to like scale it to everything. And so we've been involved in those, ensuring that we have the right product at the right place, right? Like it needs to be at the right node. And I mentioned to you, customer experience is important, and we want to go to the customer where they are. And knowing well in advance, is Peter going to actually come into the store to buy this, or is Peter going to actually order online and pick up in store because we do have BOPIS, or is Peter going to order it and he will wait till he gets it delivered at home? So making sure that we have a good mix, right? And then having the right sizes, because it's not just about the right products, because apparel, you have to have the right sizes and at the right time. Weather plays a role. So all of these, ensuring that we are there with our business partners while they plan and while during the season when they execute, and after the season, what do we do if there are things? How do we make them happen? Do we take care of them through clearance markdowns, or do we want to hold them for, like, depending on the season, right? So the seasonal merchandise basics are much easier because it can go throughout the year. But again, a year like this, where everything has been different, right? Like elections, economy, like post-COVID, and like the weather, everything has been different than what any retailer is used to. And that's been the conversations. Every time I talk to a retail technology or business outside JCPenney, everybody is talking about the same thing. They are like, hey, I wish we had a magic wand that would tell us what exactly is going to happen so we can prepare for it. So it's been an interesting journey, but that's what we have been focused on, is how do we enable our business to be as flexible and at the same time be predictive as possible.
Well, as you allude to, Sharms, data is key, and I know this is a big area that you are particularly focused on, is collecting the right kind of data, organizing it accordingly, and leveraging it for better decision making. Talk a bit about your data strategy, if you would, and some of the foundational elements that help you parse through some of the complexity you just described.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that you used foundation, right? Because that's what is very critical. And it took some time for my business partners to understand, because they're like, hey, you have data, let's just use it, right? For me to help them understand that this is foundational, right? We need to be able to make sure that the data is clean before we can use it. Garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if you don't have the data quality and data clean, whatever you get out of it, it could be the best model, AI, ML, right? But you're not going to get the results that you want. So making sure that we focus. And then the other element that we have here, and many of the retailers who went from a store to additional e-commerce and other channels, right? We always have siloed data, data marts or data lakes, right? Like whatever you call it. And we are no different. We've got data which is like, hey, this comes from all the e-commerce customers. This comes from all of our store customers. And this comes from our jewelry customers. And I have optical, I have portrait. So I have all of these things which are like rich data. And how do I make sure that they're all consolidated in a way that I can stitch them together and use them in a way that it is going to be effective with my customer, right? It's also about customer experience. I would hate to get 5 emails just because I'm in different databases, right? And can you imagine all 5 of them saying the same exact thing, right? I'm just going to put them in a delete folder and I'll never look at them. So how do we ensure that it's not just about sending emails or sending or communicating with our customers, but communicating effectively? That's very important. And on top of it, it's not just effectiveness, it's also about, you have to understand what are they expecting? Are they expecting value? Everybody expects value, but just value, or are they expecting value and fashion, trend, right? Like, because some of our customers, if you look at, they're like, I want to buy something that's trendier now. I don't want to look at something that's like last season or like 2 years before, whatever. And then we do have many customers who are like, I want which is comfortable, which is like something that I don't care about whether it is current trend or later, right? But they are like, if you give me trendy ones, I'm okay with it. But my focus is I want the quality, right? Like I want it to be comfortable and I want it to actually, I can use it multiple times. It's not one time use and throw, right? So the quality is important, the comfort is important, the fit is important. So making sure that we are actually able to showcase to the customers the right things that they are looking for, which also means that I need to understand my customer, right? Like I can't generally tell everybody everything, and I shouldn't. And so, how do I parse the data in a way that I can capture that? And then at the same time, we have these like email galore, right? Like coming from so many different, like some of the companies we didn't even know that existed, and they'll send you stuff, and we are like, how did they know that at this time of the year I look at some of these things, right? Like, so data also gets like sold from different areas, but making sure that we are there for them at the right time, right? Like prom comes up, weddings happen, Easter comes, like some of these things are very like we all know, right? Like these are fixed dates, or like they have dates that we are available. But then there are some personal things that only some retailers could know based on some of the sales that has happened, or some of the things that they have bought from us, right? Making sure that when we have like our current Thursday night football promos have been a major hit, right? Like people, every time I tell them I'm from JCPenney, people are like, we are so excited. We wait for Thursday nights and we want to see what is the big deal for this weekend, right? It's been a good big hit, and people are like, oh, these are like unbelievable promos, and we are excited to come in. And guess what? They come in for those, and they are also looking at like, we didn't know you guys had this. We didn't know that you had this brand, or we didn't know that your products in this category are really amazing. So it also has opened and exposed a lot of different things that we have not been able to do before. So making sure that we have the data parsed and stitched in such a way that we can utilize them, right? Like I'm focusing a lot on customer because that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what our company is passionate about. You can take it to like when you're looking at merchandise, when you're looking at what do we need to, what fit, and what do we need to, what size do we need to, more of this or more of the other one. Making sure that we build that as part of our overall equation, right? Technology is an enabler. Data is key for that, for us to be an enabler, right? Making sure that we are building for the future, but at the same time focusing on the data quality so that we can actually continue to build for the future are some of the things that I would say will continue. Our data strategy and our journey has been, how do we build a data platform, which is it's not like it's cliche to say I want one customer master or I want one source of the truth, right? Like we know we are going to be in a world where we are going to have multiple. For us, the focus is how can I stitch them together and continue to add on more and more, and it can be stitched in such a way that I can utilize the data effectively. So we've been focused on an enterprise data platform and working towards focusing on customer first and then adding on the different domains and the different layers, which can help us to what I'm talking about.
Very well articulated, Sharms.
Thank you.
And I can only imagine that the work that you described also positions you nicely to take advantage of some of the new innovations centered around artificial intelligence. And I wonder if you could talk a bit about how you're thinking about that. How is this perhaps the next phase of value you might derive from this?
Yep, for sure, right? Anywhere I go, anywhere you go, I'm sure you've heard this, right? Like AI, ML, like it's like Gen AI, it's all like the buzzwords, and nobody is like everybody is doing something or the other, right? The way that people are doing is different, but most everybody is touching it some way or the other. How I'm focusing on here at JCPenney is more about, it's twofold. One is I have got to focus on making it effective and efficient and optimal for my business users, right? Like how can I make things easier for them? How can I augment things? It's not going to replace anybody, but how can I augment some of the things that needs to happen? So my business can actually focus, my business users can actually focus on the things that they need to be focused on instead of like the mundane day in and day out things that they usually do. On the other side, I'm also looking at very similarly, how can I make it easy for my developers, right? Like my engineers who I have in my organization to make their life easier, make them more effective, right? And have a strong foundation for them, right? So it's again another augmentation. There are some things that we can actually have AI help us with, right? Like whether it's a code review process. Today we have manually people doing it to go through the code and say, is this good? Is this going to work through? Can I have Gen AI do that, right? And so we are doing some of the proof of concepts, and yes, they can. And it speeds up a lot. And it's a lot more effective too, right? Because you don't have the manual errors or manual interventions. When some of these things are happening, then it frees up time for my senior engineers and my senior lead engineers who can focus on designing and building, which is what I want them to spend the time on, right? So it's both on my engineering side and my business users. So we do have proof of concepts and some pilots happening to augment and to help the speed to market and the effectiveness and the efficiency of the data and the process that we are trying to optimize.
Very interesting. It sounds like some great use cases that you and the team are now focused on. As you look to the year ahead that is fast approaching, are there any additional priorities or trends that particularly excite you that you would call out?
Trends, I would definitely say making sure that we are thinking about what does Gen AI and AI can bring to the table, right? For sure. At the same time, being very diligent about not just buying everything or using everything that exists out there, right? Like be very focused on what are the areas that you want to actually focus on, and start small, and then you can figure out a way to scale it. I think that's the approach that I would take, and I would want everybody else to take. When it comes to what are we excited about, there are a few things that are imperatives that we have for our company. Customer being one, which we are heavily focused on with our loyalty relaunch that we had this year will continue, and we will have more things to accomplish there. The other one that I'm very excited about is we are in pilot mode for our next generation point of sale, POS implementation in our stores. By the end of this year, we should have about 150 stores that we will have the new technology in. And the new technology is like mobile first approach. So it's much more easier. It's not like the old way of doing. And our store associates and operations are excited about it because it's so flexible. It brings in that seamless interaction with our customers too. They can walk around and they can do a lot of different things that they're not able to do today. So that would continue in the next couple of years for me to complete the implementation across. And then the last one I would say is more focused on just all my technology modernization work that I'm doing. As part of like moving to an ecosystem which is more optimal, I do need to make sure that I'm actually modernizing my current footprint, current ecosystem. And there are lots of work that the entire enterprise teams are working on that would continue so that I can get to a point where I have the total cost of ownership, total cost to serve is also much more efficient than where we are as a byproduct. But the main focus would be that gives more modern technology that I can actually use to be able to integrate with anything that is required for our business users from outside or for me to build, right? So making sure that I'm building something that can be integrated easily is the focus. So all three of these areas, I would say, are my top priorities for 25.
Very interesting. Can you talk a bit about the relaunch of loyalty? What are some of the aspects of that you mentioned that you're particularly excited about, and one of the key customer imperatives as you look ahead?
Yeah. So for us, so it was so interesting when we relaunched it, and before and after when we were trying to talk to our customers, many of them had heard about it, but they weren't like, yeah, we get something. We don't know what it is, right? But the main aspect of it is it's about if you're a rewards customers with us, whether you have a credit card with us or not, but you get like what we call cash pass. So every time you come in, you spend certain amount of money, you get cash pass. and then you can utilize it to buy something, right? Like every 100 points, you can get $10, right? So there are, and you can accumulate some of these cash passes and use them for what you want to spend money on. So now that we have made it, we relaunched it and we said, this is available. Did you know? And then we've also made changes where when you open up your app, it actually pops up to say, you've got this in your wallet if you want to use it, right? Like it, especially our customers where they are and the economy where it is today, right? These are reasons which they are like, makes sense. I do want to buy this. I really like this. And I can use CashPass to be able to buy them. Definitely resonates really well with them. They get the excitement that they are able to buy what they want, and they are also able to put in some of these passes that they have earned. When somebody new joins, they get by default $10. And then as they actually purchase with us, they do get points, and that translates into, and then we do have certain like birthdays, you get specific things, and then you get some special promos when there are other promos going on. So you do have specific, I would say, like not coupon related, but it's more about these are things that you can utilize for specific promos when you are a rewards member. So gives that visibility to them, and at the same time, they are also able to use them for anything that they are wanting to do online or in stores, right? So it's not just one channel or the other. So interesting ones, interesting cash passes, interesting rewards that they get that they are excited about.
I wonder also, Sharms, as someone who has long been in the retail industry, your time at JCPenney follows 10 years at Walmart and at Gap as well. You have long worked in an industry that you can also be a customer of, which must be a tremendous advantage for you and for your colleagues to walk a mile in the shoes of your customers because you are one. Can you talk a bit about the perspective you have as someone who can live the experience and therefore translate what's working well or provide suggestions where things are not?
Yep, very, very, very good question. Because when someone asks me, why are you in retail for so long? That's one of the reasons, right? Like for me, retailtainment is my stress buster, right? When I'm stressed, people do different things. I just go retail therapy, right? Like I just go, not that I buy a lot, sometimes I do, but sometimes I'm like, hey, window shopping also helps. I just want to go see what's out there. So as a customer, right? Like, and I know a lot of people who are very similar, right? But at the end of the day, we used to call it eat what you cook, right? Like, it's like, hey, we create some of these things for our business partners. We need to go do the role so that we know how we are using it. Similarly, when I'm creating technology where this is focused on customers and they are like, we are building something that's going to actually make them more effective or more efficient, or experience is going to be better, I want to be able to use them too and see, do I really get those things, what we are claiming to? And I use the app a lot. I use my online version a lot. I go to the stores and I use the systems a lot too. So it becomes much easier for us to understand the pain points, because unless and otherwise you understand the pain points, you are not going to be able to build the right technology for them. So that's something that I also push my teams to do, is like, before you end up building anything, before you start working on something, make sure you go in and understand what you're trying to do. Don't have to spend months and weeks together, but just a day, a few hours to say, what are we trying to solve? And then how are we trying to solve it? Is that going to actually be effective? It might solve the problem, but is it going to be effective? Is it going to give the experience, right? Like, because sometimes I've heard people like, oh, it's just one extra click. Like, why are you like tripping over just one extra click, right? Like, and then I'm like, yeah, it just feels like one extra click. But if you are doing that as day in and day out for every single item that you have to create, and it's like thousands and hundreds of thousands of clicks that you have to do, that adds up. That's an experience issue, right? And so simple things like that. And if I think about myself as a customer, we all love some of the apps that we have on our phones because it's so easy to use, it's so efficient. And we actually spend a lot more time and money on those because it's much more easier for us to do. Even if it is, and I've caught myself, right? Like, even if it's a little more expensive than another website, I might use this one because it's easier for me. So how do we ensure that we are translating the same thing when it comes to our own systems that we are building is very important. And as a customer, I think that definitely resonates with me. And I push it down to my teams to say, you have got to look at this as a customer yourself and figure out the best way to make it happen.
That's really, really insightful, Sharms. Thank you for sharing. I wondered here at the close, is there anything you've recently read, listened to, and or watched that you would recommend to appear? Anything that comes to mind?
Quite a few things come to mind, but I do want to keep it as generic as possible. I would say there is a lot about AI, a lot about Gen AI that's coming up, right? What I would suggest is before you venture into, like anybody, any of my peers or anybody who's thinking about AI, before they venture into, the one advice that I would give them is start small, understand the benefits that we are trying to get, and then figure out a way to scale it. For example, I would say, like I mentioned, for Gen AI, what we are trying to do is twofold, right? Like we are trying to build something in-house. We are trying to make life easy for my engineers. At the same time, we are trying to make it much more easier for our business users too, like the end users. When you do some of these small tests, that can actually help you understand how big a solve these things can be, how big a efficient game this can be, and you can scale it up much easily instead of just saying, hey, I'm just going to bring in for everything and everybody. Could be a nightmare. Then the other thing on this same topic on Gen AI, one of the things that I was at a Gartner symposium that one of the keynote speaker mentioned about was fascinating was today, if you look at the off-the-shelf products, only 5% of the products have AI ML enabled. Even though we feel like any product that I talk to today, they are like, hey, it's AI ML enabled. They said it's only 5% of the total products that exist in the technology universe. In 2026, 27, they are expecting 80% of the products will have AI ML enabled. So for us to be able to actually survive and sustain that, we have got to be able to accept it, right? So we've got to fix our underlying foundation. Our data needs to be fixed. Our systems, our ecosystem needs to be fixed so that you can integrate it with all of these things. Otherwise, you won't be able to utilize. You might be able to like implement them, but you won't be able to actually utilize them. So making sure that you are building some of those things as key foundation is important. And at the same time, have a governance process, which is very important because you don't want many going rogue there to disjointed, disconnected AI systems out there. You need to have a governance in place so that you know what you're bringing into your ecosystem and how you are actually making it, because it learns, it continues to grow, it continues to get better. But you need to know what and how to the extent that you can actually control it. So ensuring that you are focused on building that governance is very important.
Great suggestions across the board, Sharms. Thank you so much for a terrific conversation. Thank you for sharing many of the exciting things that you and the team at JCPenney are working on, and the ways in which you're breathing life into this mission that you have of enhancing customer experience in some really remarkable ways. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciated all the questions. It was also well jointed. And every one of them, I have a passion about them. Our teams have a passion about them. So it was a good conversation. Thank you.